Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, Coaching for Success in Sport and Business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let them have it, coach.
G'day, everybody, and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. I have the pleasure today of interviewing Jackie Roby, who's a relationship mindset coach. And she talks about so many things around relationships, self-doubt, how she empowers especially ambitious women of color and allies to break free from hustle culture, reclaim their time freedom, and write the next chapter as the main character of their stories. I love so many, just within the wording of that alone. She is, of course, the owner of InspiredJourneyConsulting.com. Jackie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Coach Em.
Really excited about this conversation. And of course, shout out to our good friend, Ron Joseph, who connected us. Just a wonderful human in making somebody feel $1 million, doesn't he? Every time you speak with him, it's like you walk away going, oh my goodness, life is too short. How can I embrace it with two hands? So shout out to him. And we always love to start with a pattern break question, Jackie. So if a relationship mindset coach was a shape, what shape would a relationship mindset coach be?
A star.
Tell me more.
Because we love to sparkle.
And you know, the other thing that came up for me in that answer is just the number of prongs in a star, right? A relationship is never just, quite often, a two-way street. There's so many different parts of the puzzle. So take me back. How did you become a relationship mindset coach?
Well, I am grateful to say that part of this journey was people telling me my gifts and bringing that to light. During the pandemic, when people had the choice to sit in negativity and complain and go into sorrow, I chose something different. I chose hope. I chose inspiration. I showed up every day continuing to build my business. I was not in this particular business at the time, but the feedback that I was getting was, Jackie, you are the light. You are our inspiration. You are magic. I want to be like you. How do I get your level of calm? How can I just bottle up a small part of your positivity? And that was such a beautiful thing to be told. So I really took that in stride and implemented it later on. But the reason that I even got to that part in the first place was because of the lows. Because, gosh, we're at about 17 years now ago, I fell into my very first depression. And it was so deep, and it was riddled with panic and paranoia. I learned that I experienced anxiety, that I had depression, and that I also have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And what had happened along that journey was I basically spent so many years avoiding my feelings and avoiding facing memories that I'd buried, that finally it just all broke. And I couldn't run anymore. So I had to slow down. I was forced to slow down. I was forced to deal with what was happening inside of me. And that was a big part of this healing journey. And what brought me to a place now, and since then, of always prioritizing my mental health. But then years later, learning I had to prioritize my mental wellness too, and that those things are different. So seeing that, being in this beautiful space of continued evolution, I'm grateful and excited to help people so that they don't have to hit the low that I hit. Because no one should have to go through that.
Yep. So, you know, one of my favorite quotes is that eventually everyone sits down to a banquet of consequences. And uh, with that in mind, talk to me about the difference between mental health and mental wellness, especially as it relates to suppressing these feelings, and then even in the workplace they can come out unresourcefully, or in the sporting context often they will play out where someone will say to me, oh, that wasn't me out there on the tennis court, that's not who I am. That display of behavior that was so perhaps out of character, or is it out of character? So I guess where I'm going with this is sort of a two-part question for you, to just explore what happens when we suppress the emotions and don't deal with it, and the difference between mental health and mental wellness. Could you share that?
Absolutely. Let me start with the definition. So I will say that 12 years ago, when I realized I needed to focus on my mental wellness, I didn't have the words for that. What I kept saying was, I need to learn how to be happy. And it wasn't until the Global Wellness Institute coined the term that I was able to see the difference and go, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now. So when we think about mental health, that comes with a diagnosis. And you can be in a great space with your mental health, but your mental wellness can be languishing. Meanwhile, you could have your mental health in a low place and potentially be a little better in your mental wellness. So what the real key difference is when it comes to your mental wellness is, number one, you don't need to have a diagnosis. Everybody needs to focus on mental wellness. This impacts everyone. It's just like any other area of your well-being. And you want to focus and be intentional with how to flourish. So that really is the key distinction. So when I think about my mental wellness, I know it's a number one priority. I know my mental health can be more positive because I'm focusing on my mental wellness.
Love it.
It doesn't take away from medication, but that's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And what about the second concept? What are your thoughts on that?
So suppressing emotions just means that they're going to come out in another way, right? It's going to come out in how you behave in one way or another. It can impact you at all different stages of your work. I thought it was so interesting when you talked about the athlete becoming somebody different. So, for example, if you are not speaking to your partner about something that's frustrating you, right? Like, let's say you need them to give you more words of affirmation, to say more loving things. And that's just not their style, but it's very important to you. It's how you receive love. And you're not telling them. So then what might be happening is you're snapping at them over little things like, you couldn't put your dish in the dishwasher? Really? Why do I have to see this dirty dish right here in the sink? You're not capable of going a step further, right? You start to snap in other areas. It doesn't matter about that dish. Yeah, it's annoying, but what you're really wanting is for them to tell you, wow, you look amazing today. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. Thank you for cooking dinner. It was really thoughtful of you to take this plate from me, so I didn't have to clean it up. That's what you need, but you're not communicating it. So instead, it's coming out in other ways.
Absolutely. And we see it time and time again. So playing devil's advocate, what about the person in the workplace that's like, well, I'm not in a relationship with this person and they frustrate me at work, but I don't have to live with them, so I'll just put up with them. Does that work?
No. It doesn't, because they are still frustrating you. So there's a couple of different things that go with that, though. It is almost having a reflective moment to see, do they represent somebody else for you? Why are they getting under your skin the way they are? Right? Does it remind you of anybody else? And seeing if you can make that deeper connection, because that is an aha moment. And it might stop you and tame that frustration a little bit. But the other is finding a better way to actually have the conversation. How can you create more ease in this? That's really what I like to think about is we stuff things down thinking it's going to make it easier because we're really terrified to have conflict. When in all actuality, if we had an open conversation, we could create more ease in our everyday life. And wouldn't it feel better to not want to explode when that person does that irritating thing, when that colleague is just getting under our skin? There's some things, we can let go of. But one of the things that I work with for my clients, and I've worked with teams as well, is how to create that ease within yourself so that you're not getting irritated.
Well, everything does start with self-awareness, doesn't it? And
Absolutely.
yeah, I really love that. And I'm sure during the pandemic, there were also many relationships that either went one way or the other when we were forced to sort of be around that person a lot more than what we ever have. So talk to me about, I don't know if you've got any sort of, where are we at with the whole relationships, any stats or anything interesting around, I know pre-COVID, it was always 50% ends in divorce. I did run a dating business once, doubles for singles. True story, back in chapter 1 of my life. And it was always super interesting, this concept of analysis paralysis and overthinking relationships versus, I guess I'm freestyle thinking for you right now. Is there such a thing as a perfect relationship? And where are we at with relationships right now? Like, what's the status of the world? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship, but what it can be is perfect for you. Recognizing that we're constantly evolving and growing. I say that about my partner, my husband, who I love more than life itself, and we have been through marriage counseling together. We have been through highs, we've been through lows, and we continue to evolve and are open to receiving feedback from each other and open to now having the conversation about the hard things so the hard things don't feel that hard anymore. He is perfect for me, and I am so grateful for that. When we think about what we went through during the pandemic, yeah, it increased the divorce rate for sure. But even for those that stayed together, they likely spent so much time in survival mode. And that impacts the long term because you aren't slowing down. You're not allowing space to regroup, to dream together, to fully listen and be aware, to come back in a way that isn't just surviving. And that's what tends to happen. So we put ourselves in this fight, flight, freeze, appease, and that naturally happens to us, right? It's just how our brain works, how we're wired. And without pausing, without bringing mindfulness into our own beings and into our relationship, we don't see as clearly. So we're just reacting to life and to each other instead of responding. So when we think about analysis paralysis, for example, maybe overthinking our relationship, which of course we do, and actually women are more likely to stress out about their relationship, about their finances, about the overall well-being of their home than men are. So we are taking in all of this extra level of stress on top of what our mind is already giving us. 80% of our thoughts are actually negative. So we're just piling on top of that, right? And that's what makes decisions so difficult. We put all of this pressure on ourselves, and then we have the expectations of the patriarchy and those around us, and then everything else we put on us. And it doesn't allow us the time and space to see clearly and to respond, because we're just shooting from the hip to just try to get through that ever-growing list. You know, one of the gifts we had at that time was slowing down if you took it, right? If you could in some areas. But since the world has opened back up, it's almost like we've lost the lessons. We're just going extra hard. You know, at first there was this beautiful gratitude, but then it just was like we never knew what happened, and we're just going and going and going, and we're back on that fast track that is kind of a hamster wheel to nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you talk about releasing the story of should. I always say stop shoulding on yourself. You know, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's choosing to pause, choosing to respond, not react, finding the ability. You know, I talk a lot about mind monsters as well, and I know it's something that you also talk about as it relates to self-doubt. Being aware of that mind monster can only happen when we have the ability to quite like soften the hustle. But that's easier said than done, Jackie, isn't it? I mean, you and I can sit here and say, have everybody out there who's listening to this, pause right now and take 30 seconds just to be aware of how you're feeling. I mean, what other tips and tricks do you sort of use with your clients to do this? Because, yeah, like I said, it's, you know, everyone's going, yeah, sure, Emma and Jackie, like, yeah, I'll get right on that, but I've got to, but then they list off their to-do list, right? So what's one practical tip you could provide our listeners with?
Yeah. So this is great for those who are listening on audio, and anyone who's watching on video, is to take 3 deep breaths. To really, you know, pause. And if you need the assistance of understanding what a deep breath is, because we can giggle like we breathe all day, no, you're shallow breathing. And the more stressed you become, the less breath you're taking in. But if you, you know, breathe into a count of 5, hold for 2, breathe out for a count of 5. If you do that 3 times, that gives you maybe a little more than 10 seconds of mindfulness. And just that small moment can help you. It can help to create calm for you in the moment, to make it more likely for you to respond instead of react. And it builds new neural pathways in your brain away from the stress and the reactions of the amygdala and towards calm, wisdom, and happiness. It's rebuilding new neural pathways towards your prefrontal cortex, where all of this lives. That's the least developed part of the brain. I use this trick all over my home when I get irritated. All over in social engagements, right? If somebody says something and you're like, you're killing me with this, right? 3 deep breaths. You know why? Nobody can see it. Nobody notices. And that gives you that moment. There's also, you know, some tactile ones that I really love, which is just taking your 2 fingertips and Gently rubbing them together and just noticing the sensations, right? Really small thing. And you can do it under your computer screen, under a table, or even if you're standing there next to somebody, nobody notices, nobody cares. We think people are watching, they are not, they're paying attention to themselves. But for you, it gives you what you need. It allows you that presence to come back into your body. Because I completely agree and understand. It is so great for us to sit here and say, yeah, just stop doing that. It's not easy.
Mm.
And of course it isn't easy. We're not actually wired that way.
Mm.
That's why we have to put the effort, into this. And it just makes things easier in the long run. When I think about sometimes the things that I get frustrated over, that I used to get frustrated over and no longer do, it's a game changer. And I see that same thing happen with my clients.
Mm.
Part of it is even learning how to set boundaries, right? And I know you come up with that in the corporate environment all the time. Really easy one. One of my clients said the other day, I am working all the time. I don't like that narrative. Okay, let's look at this, right? And what she wanted was to be more present with their husband on the time off. So we made sure to, first of all, get to the root of what that was, to get an understanding where that came from. When did it start? Whose voice is it? Does it really matter? Is that who you are? Does it make sense? How is it serving you? And is it serving not only you today, but who you want to grow into tomorrow? And then how do we change that for this upcoming weekend? Let's small step it at a time. This isn't the rest of your life. Let's just take it a breath at a time. Setting the out of office, leaving the laptop at home. When you feel prompted to check email, do the 3 breaths, right? Remember what you're missing out on in your life if you choose to work instead. The world did not fall apart. Every client was happy, and she was happier because of it. And those boundaries sometimes can feel so impossible. But that's the thing. So much of it is inside of us, this pressure that we put on ourselves.
Back to the sporting context for a minute. What about when the emotion is so strong? Do you know how long it takes for that emotion to be released? I mean, deep breath in the moment. What about something's like it's built up, and it's a very strong emotion. The Australian Open down here is just finished, and you see a lot of them just taking that between sets, walking off the court, changing their outfits, coming back. I know that's also a lot to do with the emotional piece. And I think in today's world, in the workplace, I'm also seeing stronger and stronger emotions coming to the surface more quickly because of a difference of values that then can explode. I don't know. I'm personally experiencing, and I have in the sporting context, stronger emotions from both sides of two people's map of the world. What are your thoughts on that in relation to what are some of the first steps that we need to do as a society to be able to find that common ground, or what's your take on it?
So you brought up a lot of interesting points. So first of all, emotions live in the body for a matter of seconds. But because we attach meaning to them and perseverate on them, and because our minds are conditioned to think negatively, and because our brains are categorizing and trying to find places for all of this information that it's receiving, and so we look at the past and we make these stories up or relate them to a negative story that we had from our past, right? They stay longer. That's why they're festering. So that's the first understanding of it. I would relate that intensity to anxiety. I know they're not the same thing, but anxiety comes with a strong level of intensity that can feel impossible to let go of. So in those moments, to put a mindfulness piece forward, I tense muscles, right? Oh, I always recommend tensing your muscles for 10 seconds and releasing them. Again, it matches the intensity of the feeling and it supports you being present. So that's just a quick trick.
Love that one.
That comes down to that.
Yeah.
I'm all for articulating your feelings, right? And it doesn't have to be to anybody. It can just be to you. Can you find a private space to write out whatever you're thinking? Can you record it? Can you just say it out loud? These are not things you have to keep. You're just basically getting it out of your head so that it's not spinning around up there. That's a really big part of the release. I don't believe in having to have the perfect notebook, right? Or having the practice of every day I do this at this time. If it works for you, awesome. What I found with my clients is that it just becomes another thing they have to do. And then it falls off and then they feel guilty and they don't feel like they're good at it. And they add, I should have done this. I know I have to do this. No, you don't. You just need to get it out of your head to kind of calm it. And it almost is like giving yourself the validation that it's okay to feel. And then we start to move forward. Bottling up, suppressing, that's what gets us in trouble. It also creates this space for us to have a clearer understanding. So if we're frustrated in the office, if we're frustrated with a situation, rather than blowing up, we just release. We release in this way to help us see it, to help us feel it, to be angry if we need to be angry, to cry if we need to cry. And then oftentimes what you find is you'll get to either the core of what's really upsetting you, or you're just going to feel better knowing that it's been expressed. It's a really phenomenal process.
Well, thank you for sharing some really practical tools so far. Jackie, our guiding question on the show is, in 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what do you think makes a great coach?
Holding safe spaces. So I'm a Latina. I work primarily with women of color and allies. I have some phenomenal men that I work with. Typically, either Black hetero men or men on the queer spectrum. And for me, from what I have seen from this community that I've built, these incredible people who've been marginalized, is a space where they can be all of them, no judgment, no recommendation of being someone else, no code switching necessary, that they are understood, that there is empathy, that they're met where they are. And even in the tools provided, we work to make sure it's a fit for who this person is, based on all of the factors of what they've experienced in the world, what it's like to walk in their fabulous shoes.
It's been one of my favorite things about this episode so far, Jackie, is the pause and is the space between your thinking. A couple of times I've jumped in and I was like, oh, I think I jumped in too early there. And you were pausing while you were thinking. I don't know. Again, many people listen to this audio, but you have this wonderful way, and of course your podcast is called Through Inspired Eyes. So please everyone check that out as well. But you do have a wonderful presence and you have a wonderful calmness about you that does provide that safe space for this conversation. Because, I'm so many times we fill the space, even in relationships as well. There's the pause there and we think it's time for us to jump in and be heard, and it's not. So maybe could you land the episode? Let me know. First of all, make sure I hope I didn't cut you off on that last thought that you had. And also maybe land this episode around just this importance of the stillness.
Thank you. First of all, I want to tell you that I received that fully, and I'm very grateful. It is a practice that is now so ingrained in me, I don't even notice it. What I've realized is within the pause, within the reflection, within the stillness comes our greatest creativity, our moments of inspiration, and our ability to be our best selves. And that's something that I think we take for granted. And we think that if we move more, do more, speak more, that we're being more. But what if instead that's just being diluted? It's quality over quantity.
And that's coaching.
Exactly.
It's definitely something I've learnt over time. That less is more, the power of the pause, super important to hold that safe space for the people that we're lucky enough that invite us into their world. So with that in mind, please everybody check out Jackie Roby's website, inspiredjourneyconsulting.com, all the show notes about her She Suite program and her magic moments sessions, etc. It's been a real delight, and you opened up very vulnerably at the start of the show, from our little star through to having the hard conversations, allowing the emotions to come out so that we can ask ourselves great questions about where is that coming from and what's the root cause, so that we can choose to respond rather than react. I think that really, to me, summarizes a great relationship mindset coach. So thank you so much, Jackie, for your time and being on the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for this amazing conversation and what I've learned from you in this time.
Absolutely. And everybody, we appreciate you for pausing today. Take care. See you next time.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and U.S. college sporting scholarship placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fit while maximizing sports performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating review on your podcast listening device. And don't forget to tell a fellow coach about the show. The ball is in your court to take action and enjoy your coaching.